Tonight on KGW News, a helicopter torn open in a crash on the coast, though the pilot was barely hurt. Plus,
the integrity of sports is at issue here.
More than a dozen college athletes indicted in a new sports gambling scandal. The former Oregon Duck now accused of rigging games. Then, the president's latest threat to send troops into an American city.
The Insurrection Act is a tool at the president's disposal.
And later,
hey buddy,
why you might say Portland's Expo Center has gone to the dogs. But first, to breaking news in Northeast Portland, where authorities say a freight train struck and injured a person tonight. Portland Fire telling us this is just before 7 on Union Pacific Railroad tracks near Northeast 158th and Rose Parkway. Because of a lack of access to the tracks, firefighters had to use a ladder and ropes to lower down from I-84 and rescue the victim. They say it appears the person is homeless. They were taken to the hospital with critical injuries. Thanks for joining us. I'm David Molko. Net of bombshell allegations, one of the biggest point shaving schemes in the history of college basketball, with a new federal indictment charging 26 people, including a former Oregon Duck, who prosecutors allege deliberately changed how he played. Catherine Cook's in the newsroom. And Catherine, this is big.
David, we're talking millions of dollars in wagers allegedly made by fixers and hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribe payments to players. Now, this case involved D1 basketball and Chinese Basketball Association games. Industry experts say it was only a matter of time before this happened.
Talking about dozens of games, athletes, 17 teams. I do view it as historic.
U.S. Attorney David Metcalf noting the gravity of the FBI's college basketball betting investigation. On Thursday, federal prosecutors announced they'd indicted 26 people, including 22 former college players, in connection with a basketball game-fixing scandal. Investigators believe those involved rigged college games in the U.S. and pro basketball games in China starting in 2022. Among those charged, Jalen Terry, who played one season for the Oregon Ducks in 2021. Prosecutors say Terry's involvement in the scheme happened later during the 2023-24 season when he played for DePaul. Federal investigators accused Terry and 3 teammates of taking bribes to underperform in the first halves of 3 games.
They did so with carefully orchestrated FaceTime calls to obscure and prevent their communications from being intercepted and recorded.
The FBI says fixers would bet hundreds of thousands of dollars on games, and players would get $10,000 to $30,000 a game for underperforming. The indictment suggests certain players were targeted because they were missing out on NIL money.
There's more education needs to take place at these colleges and even the pro level, warning people of the pitfalls of shady characters who may try and entice you into fixing a game.
Brian Berger hosts Sports Business Radio. He's looked in depth at the sports betting world and isn't surprised by cases like these.
With the legalization of sports gambling, this has opened up Pandora's box to things like this happening more often. This isn't just happening in college sports, it's happening in pro sports. Obviously, people here locally know what's happened with Chauncey Billups.
In October, the FBI indicted Trailblazers coach Chauncey Billups, accusing him of playing in rigged poker games linked to the mafia. An unnamed person matching Billups' description is also accused, but not charged with fixing an NBA game. Billups has denied the allegations.
This is widespread, and I think we're going to see more and more of this.
Charges in this case include bribery in sports, wire fraud, and aiding and abetting. David.
Yeah, Catherine Cook breaking it down for us. Thanks, Catherine. Well, meanwhile, when it comes to the case against Blazers head coach Chauncey Billups, you may recall Billups pleaded not guilty in federal court in November and was released on bond. He's currently barred from gambling, and his travel has been restricted. He's also on unpaid leave from the team. All 31 defendants in that gambling case are due back in court in March. The judge has said he hopes to hold a trial in the fall. To get you caught up on tonight's other headlines now, a pilot walked away with minor injuries this morning after his helicopter went down in Lincoln County. This is a look at the wreckage in a cow pasture about 6 miles from Siletz No animals were hurt and no buildings damaged. The helicopter is registered to the Weyerhaeuser Company. The spokesperson telling us they are working with officials to figure out what caused the crash. An Oregon City man who killed his girlfriend and dumped her body in the woods has now been sentenced to life in prison. 56-year-old William Blake admitted to shooting 38-year-old Jennifer Stewart at his home in August. Prosecutors say Blake then drove to a Home Depot where he bought a tote, garbage bags, and gloves and then dumped Stewart's remains on Forest Service land. In court, the victim's mother calling Blake a, quote, rabid, savage beast. And Gresham police are asking for help finding a missing 14-year-old. Authorities say Annabella Wimberly was last seen leaving Gresham High at 12:30 this afternoon and has not been seen since. At the time, she was wearing a light-colored hoodie and carrying a teal polka dot backpack. If you know where Annabella is, immediately call 911. All right, taking a live look over downtown Portland tonight after a beautiful Thursday up and down the valley, and so good to see that fog finally lift. Chief Meteorologist Matt Spinos here with a first look at your weather impact forecast. Matt?
Hey, David, thank you. It is a clear night out there, and boy, we've got a lot of clear sky in the forecast too. Temperature is 40. The winds have gotten a little bit squirrely out at the airport, but the east wind is still the dominant feature on the weather map, and the temperatures are running as much as 11 degrees warmer in McMinnville tonight compared to the same time last night. We're a little bit cooler, but that's okay. It's still going to be a very, very warm day tomorrow. And around the state, some places like Hood River still a lot warmer. Other places where the fog is set in have cooled off a bit. Boy, that east wind really picked up today. Check out Corbett, a gust of 56. Crown Point, a gust of 52. East side of Troutdale, a gust of nearly 50 there. Ski-Ball had a gust of 37, and Happy Valley, a gust of 32. So again, blustery, yes, but it blew the fog away, it's dried out our air, and gave us high temperatures like this. Near 60 at Hillsborough, Aurora 58, Vancouver 58, and Portland hit 57. So really remarkably warm for this time of the year. You see the fog melting away here, but now we have it in the Columbia Basin where we did not have it yesterday, but today we do, and that's going to become a semi-permanent feature on the map here in the satellite imagery for the next few days. And then down around Eugene and Roseburg, the last vestiges of the valley fog here on the west side. Now, hey, earlier tonight, there was a big earthquake off the coast of Oregon. We'll talk more about that a little bit later on. David, and when we may finally see this clear weather break down and bring some showers back. Back to you.
You know they're coming at some point. Thanks, Matt. Well, in an update tonight, ODOT is warning that without more support, service and staffing cuts are coming. The Department of Transportation says it now has a funding gap of $242 million. That's down. It could mean cutting more than 1,000 positions, they say, and reducing service. In a committee meeting last night, lawmakers suggested ODOT needs more flexibility. See, the agency is required to keep costs for operations and maintenance to 6% of its budget, with the vast majority of spending earmarked for new construction.
It is the legislature that directed ODOT to spend all this money on capital projects that has now sucked up all the money and pulled it away from operations and maintenance.
While Democrats passed a funding package for transportation last session, Republicans gathered enough signatures to put parts of it, including a jump in the gas tax, to voters in November. Governor Kotek is now calling for the whole thing to be repealed so lawmakers can start over on ODOT funding next month in the short session. And new tonight, TriMet had its first in a series of in-person open houses about planned service cuts. Those cuts include eliminating part of the Green Max line as well as changes to 35 different bus lines.
Oh, it's the public's turn to take a look at what we've put together and poke holes in it. Show us what we missed. Let us know if there's something that we could do better.
Well, several more open houses are planned in the coming weeks. You can find one close to you at TriMet.org. Keep in mind any cuts which have yet to be finalized would take effect in August. To Minneapolis now, with President Trump threatening to evoke the Insurrection Act and deploy troops to the state as protests continue tonight after a federal agent shot and injured a man who officials say first assaulted an officer. Sherelle Hubbard has the update.
Shame! Shame! Heated protests continue in frigid Minnesota as dozens wave signs outside the federal building in Minneapolis protesting ICE. The ACLU of Minnesota filed a class action lawsuit against the federal government claiming immigration agents violently arrested or detained U.S. citizens who were minding their own business.
In the complaint, we detail disturbing facts regarding the ongoing assault against the rights of people in Minnesota who federal agents perceive to be Somali or Latino.
This comes after another shooting during what Homeland Security officials say was a, quote, targeted traffic stop. A federal agent shot and injured a Venezuelan national after DHS officials say the man allegedly assaulted the agent. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem says federal agents are acting according to the law and that people should be prepared to provide proof of citizenship.
We may be asking who they are and why they're there and having them validate their identity.
Like this Minneapolis woman who was asked to show her ID when she was stopped by federal agents earlier this week.
All right, can we see an ID, please?
I am U.S. citizen. I don't need to carry around an ID in my home.
Well,
this is my home.
Where were you born?
This is my home.
And in a Truth Social post, President Donald Trump threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act to deploy federal troops to the state.
The Insurrection Act is a tool at the president's disposal, and I think the president's Truth Social post spoke very loud and clear.
I'm Sherelle Hubbard reporting.
Back in local politics tonight, we're hearing more from Portland's new city council president, Jamie Dunphy, who won the top spot after over a dozen rounds of voting. You see, Dunphy was a last-minute nomination, breaking the council's week-long stalemate today. One day after he was elected, Dunphy doubled down on his message that becoming council president was never his goal, though now that he's in the role, his top priorities, he says, include addressing the city's permitting process, crumbling infrastructure, unspent housing money, and creating unity on council.
Candidly, there was a lot of ugliness that happened in the last couple of days. We need to find a path forward. We need to demonstrate that this is a body of serious lawmakers who are serious about the future of the city.
Well, you can hear more from Dunphy when he joins Blair Best live on set tomorrow on KGW News at 6:30.